Let's jump right into this explainer, because today's story is, well, it's literally going to blow your mind. We're unpacking an absolutely staggering true survival story from the aftermath of World War II. We're talking about a journey so punishing, so vast, it pretty much defies everything we know about human endurance. It's a story of unbreakable willpower, constant danger, and that raw primal instinct to survive when the odds are completely stacked against you. So settle in, because this is an epic narrative of endurance.
I mean, just think about it for a second. How does a single human being survive a 14,000-kilometer trek? To put that into perspective, that's nearly 8,700 miles. And doing it entirely on foot, right through one of the most unforgiving, frozen environments on the planet? It sounds completely impossible, right? No way someone survives that. But the sheer madness of this attempt is exactly what hooks you. We're going to break down exactly how he pulled off the impossible, step by agonizing step.
But to really grasp this journey, we've got to look at where it all starts. Picture this: a Soviet prisoner of war camp deep in Siberia right after World War II. This is a frozen gulag holding German POWs. Now you might be wondering about security. Well, it actually isn't that tight, but that's simply because they don't even need walls. The environment itself does the job. The camp is surrounded by nothing but endless snow and ice, literally thousands of kilometers from the nearest human settlement. Trying to escape out there? Yeah, that just meant freezing to death.
So the real kicker here is the sheer crushing hopelessness of the situation. Our protagonist, a guy named Clemens Farrell, he wasn't just passing through this camp. He was slapped with a 25-year sentence to work in the camp's deadly lead mines. 25 years. For a prisoner in those brutal conditions, that wasn't just a prison sentence, It was effectively a slow, guaranteed death warrant. He knew for sure that if he stayed, he'd never leave alive. And that brings us to the unimaginable gap separating him from everything he loved: 14,000 kilometers. That is the vast, icy void between his Siberian cell and his wife and daughter, who are waiting for him all the way back in Germany. Honestly, the thought of them is the single flickering light in his absolute nightmare of a reality. It's the only thing pushing him to attempt what literally everyone else considered utter suicide. His whole ordeal actually kicks off with a totally desperate and, frankly, doomed gamble. Clemens sees a fleeting opportunity and sneaks onto a departing coal train. For a split second, he sees the stars, feels that pure joy of freedom, but bam, it's instantly shattered. The train is stopped, he's caught at gunpoint, and tossed right into a freezing open-air cell. But the real punishment comes 2 days later. When the warden tosses him back in with the general population, it turns out the other inmates had been starved for 2 whole days because of his stunt. As you can imagine, they are furious and hungry, and they violently turn on him, beating him so badly he actually ends up in the hospital. So lying there in the hospital, Clemens is faced with this massive, fatal dilemma. The camp doctor, who's actually a fellow German prisoner, is totally amazed by his guts, but he lays the reality out cold. Escaping? You're almost certainly going to freeze to death. But staying? Well, that's certain death too. See, the lead from the mines is building up in the prisoners' bodies, pretty much guaranteeing fatal cancer. So it's this incredibly stark choice: die on your feet out in the ice, or die slowly in the pitch-black mines. Seeing that Clemens has this absolutely unyielding spirit, the doctor makes a really shocking decision. He actually helps him. He outfits Clemens with this crucial survival gear that is literally the difference between life and death out there. We're talking his own warm clothes, heavy boots, a compass for navigation, and, incredibly, a gun for protection. Plus, he drops a massive tip. Russian soldiers hide their food supplies along the railway lines, and Clemens can steal those to survive the early part of his trek. Now you've got to ask yourself, why would the doctor just give away all his own life-saving gear? Well, it turns out he'd been planning his own escape, but he just found out he has terminal cancer and only has a month left to live. So he hands Clemens a simple lunchbox and makes this deeply heartbreaking dying request. He asks Clemens to take it to his family and to tell them he's no longer in this world. Talk about a profound sense of duty, right? Clemens sets off on foot into the brutal night, and tragically, just shortly after, the doctor takes his own life. Okay, so Clemens is out there, but he isn't just battling the elements. Enter the camp warden. When this guy discovers Clemens is gone, he doesn't just write him off as a frozen corpse like anyone else would. No, he knows Clemens is built different. The warden becomes completely, utterly obsessed. He orders this massive, relentless search operation covering a 500-kilometer radius. And guys, this kicks off a terrifying high-stakes game of cat and mouse that's going to end up spanning an entire continent. So, practically speaking,
what was his survival strategy? How do you actually survive the tundra totally alone? Well, first off, he navigates strictly by that compass. You have to. Otherwise, you just wander in circles, which is super common and deadly in a whiteout. Second, the psychological toll is just insane. So he constantly talks out loud to himself. He has to force positive thoughts just to stave off pure madness. And third, he hunts. There's this one crazy moment where he's starving, totally exhausted, and he miraculously shoots a seal on the ice with his very last bullet. That gave him just enough calories to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Get this, he walks for 2 continuous months. Just walking. The physical and mental exhaustion gets so extreme that his brain literally starts breaking down. He starts hallucinating, like vividly imagining a sled dog running him over. But then boom, a monumental milestone breaks right through the delusion. He spots a tiny tree in the middle of this frozen expanse. He runs over, collapses, and just hugs the trunk. It sounds small, but that single tree is huge. It means he's finally walked far enough south to escape the Arctic Circle.
But as he gets into these forested areas, it turns out human greed is just as dangerous as the bitter cold. During a massive storm, a huge tree falls and actually pins him to the ground. Out of nowhere, 2 gold prospectors spot him and save his life. The 3 of them team up, build a wooden raft to cross a super dangerous river, and when one prospector falls in, Clemens literally risks his own life to pull him out. You'd think they'd be grateful, right? Wrong. The other prospector leaves them both for dead, steals the raft, and takes his partner's gold. When Clemens and the guy he saved finally track down the thief, a sudden, fatal shootout erupts. Total chaos. So now, Clemens and the surviving prospector are trekking on together into the dead of winter. Just when you think, okay, maybe he has a reliable ally now, intense paranoia kicks in. The prospector is lugging around this heavy, recovered gold, and he gets it into his head that Clemens wants to steal it. So he betrays him. He knocks Clemens completely out cold in the snow and just abandons him. It's brutal. And while he's lying there totally helpless, Clemens gets ambushed by a hungry pack of wolves. He manages to scramble up a fragile tree, but it snaps. I mean, death is literally inches away until out of nowhere, local hunters hear the noise, shoot the wolves at the very last possible second, and save his life. Unbelievable timing. These hunters carry him back to their village, and for a second, he experiences this really profound, beautiful moment of human kindness as they patch him up. But of course, this safety doesn't last. The warden's dragnet is closing in. A chilling notice arrives right in the village, basically saying anyone caught hiding the escaped German prisoner will be executed for treason. To protect these innocent people who just saved him, Clemens has to pack up and flee right back into the cold. But the villagers, they don't let him go empty-handed. They give him provisions and, crucially, a deeply loyal hunting dog.
Fast forward a few months, Clemens and his dog stumble onto a logging mill. The workers there hear his absolutely wild story and they are so moved by it. They feed him, and miraculously, they sneak him onto a train heading straight for Germany. For a second, it really feels like the whole ordeal is finally over. He's safe. But then, heartbreak. The wealthy owner of the mill finds out what happened and immediately tips off the authorities. The warden gets the message and is waiting, heavily armed, at the very next train station. Luckily, Clemens spots the ambush right at the last second. He bails off the train and just sprints desperately across the tracks. But the warden steps right into his path. After years of running, they are literally face to face. He's caught. But then, in this blinding moment of intense sacrifice, Clemens' loyal hunting dog lunges and violently attacks the warden. The dog takes a fatal bullet, giving up its own life, but it buys Clemens just enough time to scramble over the edge and drop onto another moving train passing down below. He escapes the warden's clutches by an absolute fraction of a second.
Okay, fast forward again. The year is now 1952. That means Clemens has been running, hiding, and surviving out there for 7 full years. 7 years! Right now, he's wandering aimlessly through this bustling village fair somewhere in Central Asia. He's totally destitute, has 0 money, and is absolutely starving, just staring desperately at the food stalls.
And here is where random acts of kindness step in to save him yet again. A couple of local girls notice how hungry he looks and take pity, giving him a piece of their pancake. But someone else is watching too. A Jewish man, who is actually a former prisoner of war himself, recognizes that distinct, haunted look of a fugitive in Clemens' eyes. Despite the massive danger, he feels this deep, unspoken solidarity with him. He pulls Clemens aside, hides him in a church, cleans him up with a proper shave, and, this is the game changer, hands him a highly valuable, forged passport.
Just take a second to process the unbelievable scale of what we've covered in this explainer so far. Year 1, breaking out of a frozen gulag.
Year 3, surviving the punishing Arctic Circle, the crazy prospector betrayals, and literal wolf packs. Year 5, finding the village and barely surviving that train ambush. And now, Year 7. He's finally walking up to the very last, terrifying hurdle of his entire journey, the heavily fortified Russian border checkpoint leading into Germany.
So, with his heart absolutely hammering, Clemens walks up to the booth and hands his fake passport to this stern Russian border guard. The tension is agonizing. Is the guard going to recognize his face from a wanted poster? Is the fake passport actually going to hold up? The guard just looks at him, looks down at the paper, and stamps it. He waves him right through. Clemens is just flooded with this immense rush of pure joy. He steps out onto the bridge. Freedom is literally steps away on the other side.
But wait. Suddenly, a harsh spotlight flicks on, blinding him right in the middle of the bridge. As his eyes desperately try to adjust to the glare, his heart just drops into his stomach. Standing right there, waiting for him on the Russian side of the line, is the warden. After 7 years and thousands of miles, the hunter and his prey are finally face to face for the last time.
And then the climax of this incredible story unfolds. The warden, a guy who has literally hunted this man across 14,000 kilometers of brutal terrain, just looks at him. He sees the staggering physical toll, the scars, the pure, raw determination just radiating out of Clemens. And, deeply moved and profoundly impressed by the superhuman struggle, the warden does the unthinkable. Without saying a single word, he just steps aside. He shows this totally unexpected, quiet mercy, silently granting Clemens permission to cross that border and finally go home.
Clemens walks across that line. He is finally back in Germany. He makes his way to his hometown, tracks his family down to a local church, and right there, after 7 years of unimaginable suffering, frostbite, betrayal, and 14,000 kilometers of endless walking, a father tearfully embraces his wife and his now-grown daughter. His impossibly long journey is finally complete.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought. The resilience of the human body is amazing, for sure, but it's the mind that truly powers it. What is the one thing in your life, that single core motivation that would keep you walking through the ice for 7 long years? Take a moment to really reflect on that. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this incredible true story. Keep learning, keep exploring, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.